Assalamu alaikum everyone, students, fellows, and friends. Today, the topic which we are going to discuss is short story and specifically short story history and its types. Well, the word itself shows that short story means limited stories. Short means brief. Short means a kind of a story which you can study within a go. Okay, so we are going to deal with short story and the history of short story. Well, before getting into the history of short story, I would say it's better to understand what short story is. First, we need to understand this. A short story, by definition, it says would be a piece of literature. It would be a piece of written form in prose. I hope you people remember it, what prose is. We already discussed it. Prose is a form of writing. Prose is a form of writing which emerged recently, but we won't associate short story only with the prose, and the prose which emerged in 18th century somehow rare. Short stories are, according to Edgar Allan Poe, a short story must be read in one sitting, anywhere from half hour to 2 hours. Like it should be 1 hour, it shouldn't be more than it shouldn't be more than 2 hours. It should be very precise, very short, very limited one. And he mentioned this in his book, and the book was Philosophy of Composition. That's how he defines short stories. Emergence. How short story emerged. What is the background to it? How people are aware of it? How did it came? I would say short story, if you trace back, you will trace back short story to the early human civilization. It can be associated with human civilization, I would say. And you understand what human civilization means. It can be associated with humans. Why I am saying this? Because when we go into the history of short stories, we see that we somehow we get to know about it that it's 2000 BC old. Like stories were even at that time. They existed in that era. As we know about the Homer, Iliad and Odysseus, we have heard about these stories, and we know that that time there wasn't any written piece of it, or maybe if there was, but most of the stories were in the oral form. They were spoken. For the first time, when we get to know about English literature short stories, it was somewhere in the 14th century, and it was oral stories which were written. Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales was one of them. Okay, now let's continue with the some types of the short stories. Well, there are very few limited types. We'll start with the folk tales. As I just said, that this short stories is a very early. It emerged at the start. So folk tales is a type of a story which passed from one generation to another generation, and it was totally oral. Oral traditions were the focal point in these things. Oral traditions means people used to talk about their culture, their society, the community where they were living. Like most of the things which were discussed, it was related to their people. So obviously, through folk tales, we get to know about the culture of that era. And most of the time, the themes were similar. Themes were like friendship, it was love, it was hatred, it was a fight between good and bad. And there was a specific thing which was at the start of it. It started with most of the stories started with once upon a time, and they used to have a fight within it. Like there was a message which was being conveyed, and finally they ended with a happy ending. After that, we have fairy tales. What are fairy tales? I know that you people have heard of this word fairy. When the word fairy comes to your mind, directly we will go to the supernatural elements. Any story deals with supernatural elements. Most of the time, these supernatural elements and the stories were fictitious. Okay, they were fictitious. Most of the time they were fictitious. Story means based on imagination, based on general approaches, thoughts, and like this. And these story fairy tales, they used to deal with what? They used to deal with dragons, witches, and all kind of supernatural elements were included into it. And we have some examples like Cinderella, Snow White, and others. Fables. What are fables? Fables are very simple. Fables are the stories in which we have characters, performers, which are mostly animals. They can be plants, they can be any other inanimate objects. Okay, so they are actually the characters which give us some kind of moral lesson. They teach us, as we have studied in Fox and Graves and Rabbits and Tortoise, and there are many more. Myth. What is myth? This myth, it is derived from the word mythos, and you should directly relate it to the Greek mythology, which means word, or more significantly, it means stories. Mostly, myths are associated with the religious stories. Like myths were at that time connected and related to religious stories, and obviously different stories, different societies. So myths, they deal with mythology, Greek mythology, and you know that we are talking about Hercules, we are talking about Triton, the demigod. We are talking about the uh, Proteus, the god of the sea. So these were the examples, and there was many stories which were related to myths. Legends. What was legends? Legends is a kind of a story. It's a type of story in which we have a figure, a person, any person, which is mostly somehow based on the historical it has some historical significance. But these legends, the people, they are warriors, they are famous people, they are very very highly loved and liked by the society of that people. And most of the time they were warriors, they were kings, and they were queens. So legends were all related to them. We have some kind of these short stories in our English literature as well. The earliest when you people have might heard of it, and that is Beowulf. Remember, you people would have remembered a warrior fighting with different monsters. And Robin Hood, a person who helps others for the betterment of the society. So these were the kind of a few types which we discussed today. I hope you people have understood. Thank you very much. If there is anything else, you can ask me in the comment box. Thank you.